Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children with parents who should know better, it's your boy Andy with Fraz and Dirty Dave for another episode of Holler If You Hear Me with our weekly Wednesday recap, where we run down the results of Smackdown and Raw and anything else that's happened over the weekend, as well as our own hot takes, feedback, and basically recapping everything else we think about wrestling over the last 7 days. How is everyone? How are you all feeling? Everyone good?
Living the dream, as always, Andrew. Thank you for the lovely intro. You're getting much better at this now.
No illness is going to hold me down, baby.
Yeah, you do sound a bit poorly, my friend.
I'm fucked, mate.
Oh, well, that's a shame. Hopefully, Manchester United and all the Arsenal fans crying over Tottenham winning in a few hours' time will also be fucked.
Maybe we should film this twice so that we can do like a pro Tottenham and pro Man United version. I don't know how you want to.
No,
I don't think any of our significant others would appreciate that personally.
I don't think we need to congratulate either of them, so it doesn't matter, does it?
They're both a bunch of fucking losers.
Yeah.
Ooh, there you go. There's your hot take. Unfiltered, unscripted.
None bigger than an Arsenal fan, though, to be fair.
True. I'm Chelsea till I die.
Oh, dear God. Right, let's move on.
Right then, boys. Have we got anything we want to talk about? Dirty Dave, can we get a fact for the week, please?
I've got three. I've got three facts, and they're not that old, so don't panic. Because I thought I better consider the fact that some people might not be, my age. So, on this day in the year 2000, The Undertaker returned at Judgment Day and debuted his American Badass gimmick, which some people absolutely loved and some people absolutely despised. But he came out on a motorbike and interrupted the Iron Man match with The Rock and Triple H for the WWF title, where Shawn Michaels was the guest referee, and inadvertently got The Rock disqualified by eliminating the McMahon, Helmsley, and DX faction and Tombstone and Triple H. So take that for what you think. Also, I thought there's a little theme. I thought we'd stay with The Undertaker and stay with Triple H. So, 2 days ago in 2002, also at Judgment Day, as he's a bit of a hot potato, I thought I would drop in the fact that The Undertaker beat Hulk Hogan for the second time to win the WWE Universal title at that point, or Undisputed title at that point at Judgment Day. And for Triple H, it was 2001. So I've got one from 2000, one from 2002, and I've sandwiched in 2001. Today is the day he tore his quad on Raw in that infamous tag match with Chris Jericho and Chris Benoit.
And Chris
blur that out. And Stone Cold Steve Austin, but he carried on the damn match. But still lost the tag titles. So there you go. So a return, a defeat of a legend, and a torn quad. That's a pretty interesting week in wrestling history.
I remember watching that match between Jericho and Benoit and the two-man power trip. That was sick, and also a great match. And it's Jericho talks about it in all of his interviews where it comes up, and he always says he's never been a big fan of Hunter, but he earned his eternal respect that night for continuing the match and seeing it out to the end, which is just phenomenal what he managed to do.
Pretty incredible.
Zoey Stark certainly didn't manage it, did she? Anyway.
No, but I'm sure we'll discuss Sid Justice later.
Yeah, it might come up. Right, if there are no objections, I will crack on with tonight's Smackdown review.
Touché.
So, the show opens with Solo, Jacob Fatu, and JC Mateo in the ring. Solo says Reigns is done. He's in charge now, and introduces JC, like he's some sort of heavyweight savior. He then puts Fatu on the spot and says, "Are you with me or not?" There's quite a nice little bit of back and forth between Jacob and Solo here, where it's like, a bit of side eye, a bit of friction. Jacob doesn't say a word. They can smell the tension in the crowd. It's heavy, and it's coming. That turn is coming. Next up was a Money in the Bank qualifier. Alexa Bliss, Mishin, and the lovely Chelsea Green. Early chaos. Chelsea gets ragdolled about for a little while. Mishin nearly steals it, but Alexa hits the Sister Abigail DDT clean and books her spot in the Money in the Ladder match. Alexa is back and quietly dangerous again. After that, we get a backstage segment with the newest recruit to SmackDown, Julia. She's a fantastic wrestler. If you haven't watched any of her work, go and watch it. Quick teaser, Julia gets her camera time, says she's coming for gold and will be entering a Money in the Bank qualifier soon. Not much going on really in that particular interview, but they're planting seeds. That's a good start. Next was Fraz's favourite team in the entire world, and the team that the rocket ship is well and truly attached to at this point, FrAxiom or FrAxiom versus DIY. Nathan, Fraser and Axiom are still allergic to losing, it would seem, and well, yeah, they're killing it. DIY push them to the limit, but FrAxiom are too fast, too slick, and they get the big dub again. Afterwards, DIY try to jump them backstage, but Motor City Machine Guns turn up and run them off. Tag divisions just woke up. Next was quite an interesting little segment with R-Truth and Wade Barrett. R-Truth basically going on about how Cena betraying him wasn't John. It was like some sort of weird thing that taken over John. It wasn't the real John. He goes through, obviously, the hustle, loyalty, respect. I actually thought it was quite a good promo from R-Truth building to their match at main event. Yeah, he's going to try and remind people who John really is, and I don't think that's going to go well for Truth at all, personally, but there we are. Next up, we had Aleister Black versus Carmelo Hayes. It was a decent match, actually. It was pretty back and forth, quite good equal action. Until The Miz jumped in for a DQ, which is sort of par for the course when it comes to The Miz being involved at ringside. Hayes and The Miz stomp out Black post-match, and the slow burn on this feud is building nicely. Aleister Black, I still think, looks ready to solidify himself as not just a face, but as a heel as well. Like, I don't think he's going to be one or the other. I think he's going to go tweener, because a lot of what he's saying in his promos is sort of like, I'm not here for fans or things like that. It's like, I'm here for the competition and to sort of right wrongs and stuff. Money in the Bank qualifier was next. Solo and Jimmy Uso versus Rey Fenix. Sorry, I'll say that again. Solo versus Jimmy versus Rey Fenix. Fenix gets the crowd fired up. Jimmy throws bombs, but Solo plays it smart. JC, Mateo, and Fatu come to help from ringside. Solo sparks Fenix and gets the pin and qualifies for Money in the Bank. Jacob once again doesn't interfere, but he doesn't stop it either. He's just quietly watching everything going on. Solo praises JC. Fatu watches from behind. JC looks like he wants to flatten someone, and you can tell this is all going to fall apart. There's a match then booked by Nick Aldis for JC versus LA Knight straight away. He debuts his in-ring persona as someone other than Jeff Cobb, which I'm not particularly big fan of, doing a rename after you've already debuted as someone as a character. But the crowd didn't seem to care much, and I'll bring up that point later. Didn't really get much heat, but Knight tried to sell it like a pro, and make it worthwhile watching, but it didn't really land. And in the main event, Tiffany Stratton defeated Nia Jax. Quite a decent match, actually, I thought, from watching. Naomi tries to, of course, involve herself once again with a chair. Jade Mangill comes out and evens the odds. Crowd's quite into it, actually, for a change. Tiffany hits the prettiest moonsault ever twice and gets the win. She did survive an Annihilator, which was quite cool, by just sticking a hand on the rope, which was a cool, nice little wrinkle. And then, yeah, the show ended with Tiffy standing tall. So there we go. That's SmackDown in a nutshell. Students, what do we think of SmackDown this week?
As I alluded to before we come online, I thought the show was better than it has been over the last few weeks, just purely because they packed up with matches. And the matches, okay, all the matches weren't great, but some of them were, and the ones that weren't great were entertaining. And that's what happens, folks, when you concentrate on wrestling as opposed to an hour or an hour and a half worth of promos. I think we'll find, you guys have already alluded to the fact it's being booked badly and the length of the shows are killing it, really. But there are a few things happening. Obviously, it's going to cut to 2 hours, We're also missing a champion on the show, some real star power. If we can get the title off Cena, relatively soon, and give it to someone that's going to be similar to what Jay's doing on Raw, it will increase its stock and its value. And again, I still feel that perhaps some of the feuds are a bit overdone, shall we say, but they're coming to an end, and it'll be exciting to see what's happened. And this week, I did think they started strong with the Solo and JC Mateo, who I'll talk about shortly if you guys don't mind, and Jacob Fatu. They're the guys you want to see on the show. And I thought Solo was great this week as well, on the mic. If you can get that version of Solo every week, you're golden, because he was funny. He doesn't come across as like this wannabe mafia boss anymore. I'm glad that he went through in the qualifier match. I'm a little disappointed that Rey Fenix took the pin, because, as we alluded to last week, I think I said Jimmy Uso's doing fuck all at the moment, and it wouldn't hurt his character if he took the pin there. Whereas Rey Fenix arguably would be amazing in the Money in the Bank match, but also it just seems like WWE don't value him as highly as Penta as a singles wrestler at the moment. And it's almost like since Rey Fenix has debuted, Penta's almost, his push has had a bit of a halt as well, and they're just biding time until they get the Lucha Brothers back together. But that was my take for SmackDown.
I was going to actually just echo that. Then I was going to say about how the fact that since Mania, Penta's been on a bit of a losing streak. I don't think he's won since Mania, since he lost at Mania, or since he was not pinned at Mania, but you know what I mean? Like not involved in the pinfall at Mania. But yeah, I don't think he's won a match since. I don't think so. He lost to Dominic the night after.
Yeah.
He lost to...
We'll get to this week's Raw, obviously, but yeah.
Yeah, I don't think Penta's won a match since Mania either, so I think maybe Fenix and Penta are slightly on the skids at the moment, but they're still brilliant.
You don't have to win to get over or be over. I mean, he's still, I think Penta has definitely got the better of the two signings over him and Fenix, but I think part of that is Raw is so over. There's more investment in Penta's character, and I think there is in Fenix. He's got obviously better entrance and all that kind of stuff. So he's got a bit more naturally going for him anyway, and the fact he's on Raw, I think, helps, because Raw's full of energy, vibrant. It's everything you want some character like Penta to be on Raw. It's hard when two people debut at the same time, and we know who they are and we know their history. There's always going to be a better one and always going to be a worse one to start off with, but it'll be interesting to see where we go with it, because they're both fantastic.
I think it'd be fair to say, for those of us that watched AEW, it was always kind of expected that Penta was the character, Fenix was the spot monkey. And I think without the combination of the two together as Lucha Brothers, we're not seeing a lot of expansion on Fenix getting much of a character yet. I'm hoping that with the Andrade and the Legado del Fantasma sort of wrinkle and the story there that's being built, there may be some progression. But generally speaking, Fenix has always, from my interpretation, has always been more of a case of this guy's going to do the high spots. Penta's the character. Penta's the one that's going to generate the story and generate the intrigue and the interest.
He was the JD McDonough of the team.
Yeah.
The sacrificial lamb that can do all the amazing, fantastic stuff, but he's just not quite there with his character yet. Yeah. But plenty of time. He's young. He's good. And like you say, there is opportunity on SmackDown, but we've discussed the format of SmackDown, and I still think that's the problem for all the talent. And I think that will change when the show changes back to 2 hours and we get more urgency in the show. I think that'll help everybody.
I have a quick take regarding, two things actually. One I missed, and that's the Drew McIntyre promo. There was a promo from Drew McIntyre directed towards Damian Priest, which built for their steel cage match. I thought that was quite a good promo. He seemed like quite a savage. He's the savage Scotsman. What can you say more about that? But that didn't get mentioned in the recap. That's going to be quite a good match, I think, in the steel cage. It's going to, if WrestleMania and that street fight's anything to go by, this is going to be a bit of a barnstormer. And the other thing I was going to say was regarding the ratings. We've talked obviously at length on this channel about how SmackDown has been a bit less than since Mania, and since we've really been watching and reviewing the show. We spend obviously quite a little bit of time reviewing these shows, and SmackDown always gets the fair share of the shake, but it just seems a bit disjointed. This week seemed slightly better. It seemed like there was an improvement. But I think if you look at the statistics and if you check the ratings on things like, PWI and things like that, you'll see that the ratings for this week's SmackDown are the worst ratings since the beginning of the year. And that's not a good sign. And I think that's paying the price of having a few lackluster weeks with really middling crowds, not much going on, not a lot of story progression, but also the framing of the card, like Fraz mentioned last week about how they've got the US title on first. That's the important thing. That's the thing that's hot at the moment. And then they've got the women on last. Now, don't get me wrong, give the girls their flowers. That match between Tiffany and Nia was really good, but it's like, it doesn't need to be the main event every week. You can open the card with that. You could have that as the opening match and have the JC and LA Knight match go on last, or the Money in the Bank qualifier go on last. You can shake it up. It doesn't always have to follow the same formula. But that's me, and I think they are paying for that in the ratings.
I mean that being said, sorry Andy. That being said, just going back to your Priest thing, all I wanted to add was I really hope it ends the feud. I think these guys both need to do something different. You're kind of like stuck in this whole. Priest is stuck in a Drew McIntyre vortex and vice versa. And there's so much talent that these guys can work with. It would just be nice to see them do something different. On the case of the main events and stuff, we all know my opinion of women's wrestling. It's not my favourite. That's nothing to do against them. It just doesn't engage me like watching two hurly-burly men wrestle in their pants. But I do think Tiffy is elevating, and he either found that incredibly funny or is dying.
It's the latter, sorry.
It's the latter. I do think that Tiffy is elevating the title. I have to give her flowers where flowers are due. She seems to be, she's the only champ on the show, world champ, and it does garner interest from, the majority of the WWE universe. She is over. She does have relatively good matches, and Nia Jax also needs a little bit of love here as well. I might have I've chucked some shade on her about how she hurts opponents and stuff, and Davis quite rightly put me down and said that was a long time ago. But then when the women get put in the spotlight, they are doing the job they need to, but as I alluded to earlier, they need to have a champion, a male champion on the show that just brings that energy. Someone who's going to be prevalent every week to help you build a bigger story, as opposed to what we're getting right now with Mr. Cobb or Mr. Mateo. If anyone's got anything to say about what I just said there, you're more than welcome to take the stage. If not, I am going to segue towards Mr. Cobb.
I was just going to echo that. I think you're right. I think, on a show that actually SmackDown this week was a lot better. It flowed better. It had more matches, which was good. But you're absolutely right. Not only is the main male WWE champion not wrestling on the show, or not even on the show, the US champion didn't wrestle on the show. The tag team champions weren't even on the show. So yeah, the women have to represent, don't they? But I agree. I think they've been doing the best they possibly can. And again, I said last week, and I said the week before, I don't actually. It's not from a lack of talent. I just think the formatting was wrong. I think last week's show, if you'd have taken the exact same segments but jumbled them up and moved them around a bit, it would have been better. And like I said, there isn't enough pull to get me to stay watching from start to finish to the main event. There's not enough backstage interaction. You know, it's not like they're not building up the show to make people stay and watch all the way through, because you want to be teased at the beginning, and then you want to see teasers through the middle, and then you want to see some sort of payoff at the end. And we'll talk about that with how it worked really well this week on Raw when we get to Raw. But do you want me to do my hot takes before we speak about JC, or do you want to do JC first?
Yeah, no, you go for your hot take. I will just add, who doesn't want to be teased and then have a big payoff at the end of it, eh?
Well, everyone likes a happy ending, don't they?
Yeah,
After
exactly.
a little tease.
All depend. Well, yeah. All right. I'm not going to say anything.
Refrain yourself, David. Refrain yourself.
It's all about control. Anyway, there you go. My hot takes are quick because I actually do like the women's wrestling for some strange reason. I don't know why, but and I was actually pleasantly surprised and really pleased with the Money in the Ladder qualifying match, but not I'm absolutely fine with who won, and I thought the match was really good, but it just made me die how over Chelsea Green is for actually how little she has to do to get such a really big reaction. She played the wimp. She sort of got caught in a few random comedy moments, just like you'd expect in a play school or a kindergarten where kids get caught out. And but she's so over. It's a shame she didn't win just for that, because she had a fantastic performance in last year's Money in the Bank ladder match. But is what it is. FrAxiom, the tag team, we haven't talked about them. Amazing tag match for DIY. Crowd are really into it. I thought it was really, really good. Obviously, incredibly spot heavy. When that happens, there's a few little boo-boos and a few little missteps. But overall, it's an amazing tag match. Well worth watching. I was really pleased with Solo Sikoa this week. Echo Fraz. I thought it absolutely fantastic. Opening the show, it was a really great promo. I thought you can definitely tell what's coming. To a degree, I think there'll be a couple of swerves along the way, but it's great to see him not only back on the mic and being awesome on the mic, but actually back in the ring and actually winning. Obviously, we've touched on who took the pin. I think it worries me actually that Jay wasn't pinned, Jimmy wasn't pinned, because I'm sort of thinking, what's he going to do again? Because we know something's going to happen with Solo. Solo's going to make a little group. Fatu's going to break away. Something's going to happen, and you sort of think, well, maybe Jimmy and Fatu would be a good little tag team in the short term while the feud's going on. But I don't know. It's a bit weird. I would have thought he'd have lost that match and there'd have been some bloodliney type interference with that. But no. To echo Andy really quickly, I thought that Drew McIntyre's promo was brilliant. But I actually have to say, you boys are probably going to hate me, but I actually really liked the Damian Priest advert for Saturday night's main event, which I think was on pretty early in the show. It's a promo-based advert. And for a split second, I thought he might have been talking about Hell in a Cell. And I thought, that's a bit extreme.
I thought, yeah.
Saturday night's main event. I disagree that I don't think this should be the end of their feud, but I do think it needs to finish soon. But I think Priest will win this match, and then there'll be one each, and then they'll have to go to the rubber match. But you could revisit that later in the year, or you could kill it off at one of the next Premier League. But yeah, it reminds. It's a bit like Michaels and Angle. They had two matches quite early on in the year, and then they went back in October and redone and did the third match. So you could go back later and do it. But yeah, overall, much better show, much better matches. I think it flowed better. Still a bit of a killer for 3 hours, but no, it was really good, I thought, this week.
Okay, just a quick one. This is to Andy. Do you still have the same opinion about FrAxiom going through teams too quickly? Or are you coming around to my method of thinking that perhaps they're just a really good tag team, they're cooking at the moment, and they're not actually squashing anyone. They're just looking good with what they're doing.
They're not squashing anyone. they are going through teams too quickly. I think in my mind, I thought about this earlier. I was like, what's the best comparison in terms of teams that have come up from NXT and accomplished things on the main roster in a short period of time? And my mind goes back to, of all people, Enzo and Cass back in the day. These boys came up from NXT, were massively over, more over than almost anyone in the company at the time. And I don't believe they ever actually won the World Tag Titles. I know they challenged it for them a few times, but they were over hugely, but they were not dominant. They weren't running through teams like FrAxiom are. And I do feel like it's selling the profits, DIY, the Motor City Machine Guns, Pretty Deadly especially, selling them short. And I think I'm not saying that FrAxiom need to be on a losing streak, but I think, this is supposed to be a team that have come up from the developmental category and are now mixing it with the big boys. We've seen Roxy and Julia come up from NXT, and Stephanie Vaquer. Vaquer won her matches, I think. I think she won all 3 of her matches. Julia and Roxy haven't won anything. They still feel special and they're still enjoyable to watch, but they don't have to win. And I feel like those 2 boys, whilst they are massively entertaining and hugely talented lads, I don't feel like they need to be winning as much. I certainly don't think they should be having a 2-on-2 sort of solitary title shot, which I think was booked in the show for not Saturday night's main event. I think it's next week after.
Next week, yeah.
So
all I will say is, Andy, you keep sort of comparing them to coming up from NXT, which they have, rightly so. But if they came from, say, Ring of Honor or TNA or AEW, would you still have the same opinion? Or is it just because they've come up from NXT and NXT is kind of a feeder for WWE, like, I don't know, rookies, would you class them as? Personally, I don't see the difference. I just think that their levels above most of the teams at the moment, and that's only because that's how WWE want you to see it. And I don't have a problem with them running through teams and then winning the title if it's all gonna, I don't know, come together at SummerSlam, for example, and have a massive TLC that they should have had at WrestleMania, for example, and then drop the straps in. And you can have this back and forth. We're talking about hot potato with the World Heavyweight Championship. You can have that with the tag titles. I would probably be leaning more on your side of the argument if they were squashing teams and if teams were looking really weak against FrAxiom. But the fact that, in particular, Nathan Frazier, like, he seems like mid-match he just downloads, the opposition's game plan and then engage, and they just look that fucking good at the moment.
They are really polished.
That's just my opinion, and probably don't. I didn't want to get into a FrAxiom debate. But yeah, I like what they're doing, and it keeps me interested in the tag division, because how many times can you watch the Motor City Machine Guns, DIY, and Street Profits all have this, back and forth with each other? And you could chuck in Pretty Deadly, and I do feel that they have got the short end of the stick in terms of, perhaps not winning the titles or being more prevalent in that title picture. But it's refreshing. And it's nice to see some of the people from NXT. Like, I don't watch NXT, and I never really have. I know you guys were massive fans of it when it was better than the main WWE product. But, seeing guys like that come up and actually outdo the more established stars.
It's what you want. It's what you want, isn't it? It's like football.
They're creating superstars, yeah.
Yeah, you want to bring someone through the academy, don't you? I mean, the thing I'll say about this is the thing that really highlighted this match for me on SmackDown was not only were FrAxiom over, not only was the tag match itself over, but I mean, it's actually the best sort of crowd reaction I've seen for DIY. And if FrAxiom can pull that out of DIY, because DIY are amazing, but like most of last year, they got no crowd reaction, either through entrance or through their matches, despite how amazing they were. But now they're heels. It's been a bit hit and miss with their crowd reactions, but man, it was such a good tag match. Both teams absolutely nailed it. And if FrAxiom can do that with them, or they can do that for FrAxiom. I'm much more excited about the tag division now than I was 3-4 weeks ago, even with that amazing ladder match, which was amazing, but that's always going to get over. Your normal weekly tag matches have been a bit hit and miss, especially with the crowd. So no, I was really excited with that tag match this week.
Right, last take for SmackDown. We'll move on to Raw. I know it's only been a week, but Jeff Cobb came back, and I just felt it should have hit harder than it did. I don't like the name, JC Mateo. I don't understand why he's changed it. Perhaps it's got something to do with naming rights, but correct me if I'm wrong. Andy, you'll know better than me. Has his finisher also changed as well, the name of his finisher? Or is that...
it's always been Tour of the Islands.
Tour of the Islands, right, okay. And then, the outfit, black trousers, black vest. It looks like you've unlocked him from, like if you're creating a character on 2K, and that's the only outfit you've got until you level up.
Yeah.
You can I can almost picture it now that he's with Solo. He's in as this enforcer character. You can see that he's going to be fodder for Jacob Fatu. And then that will lead to Solo and Jacob. Where does he go? Like, he's just going to drift off into the obscurity of lower mid-card nothingness. And it's kind of, I get it. And I have this week, I have done a bit of research and watched some of the highlights of him in Ring of Honor and New Japan, etc. And he looks quality. He looks like a great wrestler. I know he's 42, but when you're coming in at that age, they haven't got time for him to, I don't know, play this particular character and then fuck off for a year because they don't know what else to do with him and then build him back up again.
I think they've missed the boat with how they brought him in. I think that the LA Knight match doesn't get over because it's not just because of what he's wearing and what he, the lack of character or the change of name, which all of those points I agree with. But I just think you want to bring someone in like this, like you say, he's 42, supposed to make a big impact. He comes in at Backlash, sort of has a meh, sort of helps Fatu, really just helping Solo. I think they should have saved him for the blowout, and they should have saved him, and he should have come in and saved Solo Sikoa and have Solo beat Fatu in like a shock. That would have been, oh my God, this person's come out of nowhere, and it's like someone's beat, Jacob. He's just sort of come in, helped out a little bit in a fatal 4-way, which, Fatu probably already had one anyway. Done nothing really on SmackDown. And gets thrown into a match in a vest and pair of trousers with a name change. It's very meh. Very meh.
I would have personally rathered him be the third man in Seth Rollins' group. I think
I think
we made him prominently placed, got him an opportunity to give more character. Plus, you're sticking him with Paul Heyman, which is always money, and you would have seen everything that would have become. This is. We need backup for Solo to make Solo look strong. This feels so much like 2013, 14, 15, 16 Roman Reigns, make him look strong. It's very lackluster. And don't get me wrong, I love Jeff Cobb. I think Jeff Cobb's brilliant, and all the work I've seen him do from Lucha Underground all the way through to modern day. He's brilliant. And he's a brute. He is monstrous. I think he had a match with Mike Elgin in New Japan, Wrestle Kingdom, and it's fucking phenomenal, hard hitting, brutal. But
I tell you who reminds me of. It almost reminds me of what they did with Taz in 2000. They're just going to stick him in a tracksuit, and he's going to end up fighting Jerry Lawler, and you just think, what a waste. Unless there's something
worse. Could end up fighting bloody Pat McAfee on Backlash.
Yeah, unless there's something we don't know. He's 42, unless he's injured, unless he is, this is his last payday, unless he can't do the stuff that he's done before. So they're not going to build him to make him be this incredible beast that he isn't or physically can't be. There's a chance that's the case. That was a bit like that with Taz. But yeah, I found it very, very Taz-esque. Comes in, makes a bit of a shout at a pay-per-view, sort of think, okay, here we go. And then just nothing.
Right, let's get on with the Raw recap then, gents. Andy?
Absolutely right. So Raw opened with Logan Paul coming out for a promo segment with Gunther, where they talk as if Jey Uso doesn't exist, and looking past each of them, looking past Jey a little bit. Gunther warns Logan that he's in over his head. Jey sneaks in and super kicks Logan. Crowd loved it. Gets the message sent early. After that was the excellent match between AJ Styles and Penta, and Finn Balor and JD McDonough, which was a great match. Yeah, really, really fine match, that one. El Grande Americano sticks his beaky nose in where it's not needed again, interferes again, knocking Penta out, and Balor nails the coup de grace on Penta, and Judgment Day win via outside shenanigans. Next, we had a backstage segment between Seth Rollins and Braun, who tells the Young Gun to go have some fun. Code for use a bit of the stick if needed. After that, we had a great match. I really enjoyed this match between Sheamus and Grayson Waller. Big beatdown. Grayson took. He had chunks taken out of him. This poor lad. He tried making some comebacks and getting some licks in, but Sheamus just beat this kid like he was dominant. Hits the bro kick and seals the win. The whole time, Austin Theory's on the outside laughing his head off, basically, but trying to swallow it, which was quite funny too. Then the backstage segment, we had Rhea and Roxanne crossing paths. Just a quick little visual between those two. No words, but it's clear they're the female Money in the Bank favourites for right now. Then we get to the Money in the Bank qualifier for Roxy and Becky with Natalya. Roxy actually beats the veterans and rolls up Becky clean for the win. The crowd popped big for that one. Becky's seething. She complains about Roxanne's sudden rise and calls out Natalya's unsolicited pep talk, still burning over Backlash. The next match was a shocker, really. Great to see Kairi Sane back in the ring. Another Money in the Bank qualifier between her, Kairi Sane, Rhea Ripley, and Zoey Stark. Rhea dominated the match early on. Zoey tried to do a missile drop kick, like she has like a sniper missile or some sort of weird torpedo drop kick. She's had loads of knee injuries in the past, and she took a horrific top rope bump where she landed and almost Sid Justiced her own legs, her own knee. So bad that the ref actually stopped the match. We go back to what we were saying at the start about Triple H finishing the match. This was, I would say, it looked worse. The ref stopped the match for her to be carted off. She was helped out of the ring. In the feed doesn't show this. I think the full feed live showed this, but she was helped out of the ring. She took 2 steps on the floor, and then the referee had to pick her up and carry her to the back. She was in so much pain, bless her. Yeah. So horrible to see that sort of thing happen, especially live. Following that, obviously they had to call an audible because there's no way Kairi was supposed to lose on her first match back from injury, but Rhea was always going to win. So Kairi had to lose, and Rhea hit the riptide on Kairi and picked up the dub. Backstage, Roxy and Judgment Day. Finn Balor introduces Roxanne politely to the Judgment Day. She hands out some nice little gifts. She gives Carlito an apple. She promises to get Roxy some what's her name?
Raquel Rodriguez.
Thank you, that one. Yeah, the one with the back. She promises to get her a cake next time she sees her, and she gives Dom some chicken nuggies, chicken tendies, and he's already digging into them already, which is funny. And Finn has a great visual where he says, I look forward to hearing what Liv's got to say about this, which was quite funny. There's a split coming there, 100%. Next up was the main event, I believe, which was Jey Uso versus Bron Breakker. Fast-paced opener. Jey with 2 suicide dives. Crowd was electric. Seth Rollins interferes eventually, and the match ends in a disqualification. And of course, CMpunk and Sami Zayn sprint on in to even the odds at the end. And Logan Paul runs. They basically CMpunk and Sami Zayn fight Seth and Braun through the crowd, etc. And then Jay's just sort of like recovering, and then Logan comes in and just nails him in the face, and then stands there looking pleased as punch with himself. So that was that, and that was Raw in a nutshell.
Monday Night Raw. I will just say, push, carry, and cross at all costs. You had the basketball player from the Pacers, Halliburton, on there for like 4 minutes or whatever. You know, that's time. That's more time than Karrion Kross has had in the fucking ring. Just for me, shocking. But again, I think the whole wrestling community agrees with me on that point. It's not really a hot take. It's just more what I would like to see.
It's the most over he's been for the little that he's ever done.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah.
That Indiana Pacers thing was a joke, mate. That was shocking.
It's not even worth talking about.
You've undersold that.
No, it's not even worth talking about because they're just trying to sell the new DLC for 2K. That's all that is. Did you think Gunther was almost like that's as close as I've seen him to being a baby face?
Well, my note I've got for Gunther one, I thought it was really good when he did come out and interrupt, to be fair. But also, one of the comments he made is he made a comment about this being his passion and this is his life. And you'll see what non-wrestlers, what I think of non-wrestlers. And I thought, well, that's interesting because that's an open comment to more people like Pat McAfee or Logan Paul. So I think that's going to extend this storyline a little bit longer for Gunther. And yeah, I think you're right, could potentially turn him face because ultimately fans are going to love that, aren't they? Because ultimately fans don't like part-timers, do they?
No. I mean, I don't know. I wouldn't like to see Gunther as a face, a tweener, maybe, for people like Logan Paul. Also, I thought Logan Paul, and I know you don't like him, and if you put anything on the internet that's remotely positive about Logan Paul, you may as well be him yourself. But I thought his crowd control this week on the mic was great. And watch what's the podcast that Bubba
Busted Open.
If you watch that and hearing him talking about Logan Paul as well, he echoed my sentiments from a couple of weeks ago, where basically he would not be surprised if Logan Paul was a champion by the end of this year. Someone that's that over in terms of pure heat.
If you want a heel champ, yeah.
And also the fact that he is getting better every time he's in the ring, whether he's cutting a promo or having a match. He's not gone away. He's not like Cena. And obviously I am joking here, but I do think he's getting better, and I do think that he's getting a lot of shit for unnecessary reasons. He's trying hard, and we'll have to see what happens to it. I'm all for a Logan Paul run as a champ at some point if he sticks around. I don't think he should beat Jay on Saturday, and I don't think he will.
No.
But if he puts in the hard work and he pays his dues, there's no reason why he can't roll with the championship.
I think this week's the first week he looked more like, I won't say leader. I'm not saying he's like leading the show or leading the dressing room, but he looked a lot less of a follower. Like you said, I think certainly more in control of himself and the crowd, as opposed to relying on someone to, tip his hat and tell him when to say something. He did say the same line twice, so I don't know whether he went a bit early with that. But I mean, who cares? You're live. It's fine. You didn't say anything wrong. So what? You repeated yourself.
It's very easy to correct mistakes in the edit, as we know.
What are you talking about? We never edit our shows.
This is live.
We are live.
But we also did miss one backstage segment of Seth approaching Logan backstage, and I think Logan's alluding to the fact that he might be speaking to Jake Paul because he's like, look, brother, get me out of here. And Seth comes along and was like, look, after the match tonight, Jay's not going to be 100%. This is your chance. Take it. And if you get past Gunther, we can maybe run back our Mania match. And it's just like, I don't know, it's just little things like that where it's a nice nod to him. Where...
Sorry.
Cool. No, you crack on.
No. I was sorry. I just get excited because this is the difference between Raw and SmackDown for me. So Rollins made several backstage appearances that add and build to not only the main event tonight, but also Saturday night's main event, and they made sense. He's almost in a Paul Heyman vein. It's right. He's going to speak to Gunther. He's going to speak to Logan Paul. He's going to bump into Jey Uso. Obviously, that's going to happen in the ring. It all makes perfect sense, and he's doing his manipulation, and it's a reason to keep watching the show. That's what your backstage segments need to be. They need to be little feeders and little teasers for the main event, and that's what I thought they did really well on
feeders
Raw.
And teasers. Love it.
So sorry, I just got excited.
No.
One of my hot takes was Rollins and his backstage.
Yeah, you're absolutely fine. I had a few other bits that I liked on there. Roxanne Perez. I know I said I'm not a fan of the women's side of things, but it's so much. I'm so much more invested on Raw. I think she's quality, and it would not surprise me if she does win Money in the Bank if Rhea doesn't do it. I think a lot of people are just like, oh, we're having Rhea shoved down her neck. But did you hear the pop she got, even when she was backstage getting ready? Like, I'm not being funny, but if you're that over, get them in, wherever you can. And get them in. Oh, news flash. Tottenham have scored. 1-0. Apologies. Get her in wherever you can because she is quality.
Well, at the end of the day, some people used to moan about Austin being on the show and winning all the time. You can't account for some people's taste. If it's over, it's over. It needs to be on. And I've said this before. If you've got a show that's got 2 or 3 people on it, if you're lucky enough to have 2 or 3 people, I mean, really, one. You either want one white hot face or you want a couple of really good over talents. It makes the crowd care more about the overall show, and it invests the crowd more in the other matches and the other people, which means those people build and you take them more seriously because you get emotionally involved in them at an earlier stage. That is, again, what I think Raw has over SmackDown with the way it's booked. Penta and AJ Styles in the opening tag match was off the charts, with Finn Balor and JD McDonough. It was just a great tag match. What a way to start the show. And I just don't think it lost any energy because the crowd were just so into it. You're starting the show with two former world champions and a newcomer, and obviously everybody secretly loves JD McDonough. And even the women's matches. And just to talk about the difference between Penta and Rey Fenix in terms of winning and losing, yeah, I agree. Penta's not been on a great winning streak, but he's in 2 programs at the moment. One with the Judgment Day, which is hilarious. He comes out and costs them, they come out and cost him. And 2 with El Grande Americano. So he's going to venture off into 2 different stratospheres with those ones. I mean, that's a pretty good place to be for a relative newcomer. Because would you fighting Chad Gable, however he's dressed up, and fighting with the Judgment Day, however over they are at the moment, they're still a great team and a great group. So I think he's in a really good place, to be fair.
Much better place than Rey Fenix is in, yeah. I've got a couple of takes about this week's Raw. I do think it was the better of the 2 shows, as good as SmackDown actually was, and it was an improvement on recent SmackDowns. Raw was the better show. I think we can all agree on that. Better pacing, like Dave said, with Seth sprinkled in throughout the show, sort of fingers in all the pies and controlling everything from backstage. My only feedback on that was, my only problem with Raw was Punk. Punk is your most over star at the moment, I think, or certainly is in terms of aura and merch. Obviously, he's still moving a lot of merch. And the fact that he was only featured at the last minute, no speaking spot, that's one of Punk's biggest, strongest points, was he can speak, he can talk like no one else. And they didn't even know him talk. And it's just like, really? You're going to waste a segment on... You're going to waste 20 minutes talking about Matey Boy? And not have Punk talk. You're not going to have Karrion Kross on the show. You're not going to do so many things they could have done there with Punk, with anyone, and they just didn't. But hey, at least he was on the show. What else?
Can I just touch on that, Andy?
Sorry, go on.
Before you move on, I think with Punk, you're right. He is massively over, but don't you think that they're possibly saving that side of the story for a little bit further on down the road? I don't think at the moment there's a lot going on, and I will disagree with you slightly in terms of most over wrestler at the moment. That's
not Jay. That's not Jay. Yeah,
that's not Jay. That's right. And I just there's unfinished business between Seth and Punk. They still haven't. He still hasn't got his revenge on Punk. There's a story going on where Seth's trying to establish the faction, where he's trying to manipulate everyone like the puppet master for the title, and it will ultimately lead to Punk. And it just goes to show how strong.
The story of Raw.
It goes to show how strong the show is when you don't need to have Punk on there other than a run-in at the end.
Yeah,
and I know you're a big Punk fanboy, but it wasn't a disaster for me.
I love him as well, and I'll be really, really quick on this one because I agree and disagree. Andy, I love CM Punk. I think it's fantastic, but and yeah, I completely agree. His mic work is one of the best things, but also you don't always need a 20-minute Punk promo. And actually, I don't even think he was advertised to be at the show. So his music hits, the crowd goes absolutely out because there's been no mention of him throughout the show. No one said anything. And you sort of think back to sometimes that works. I mean, Austin just used to come out sometimes. His music hit, wouldn't know he's there, come out, stun someone and walk off. You know, and like this is a guy who's amazing on the mic as well. So sometimes I think this was more about just showing that Punk's in a different sort of mood at the minute. And actually, that's not the main story of this week's Raw because that's going to go into Saturday night's main event. But I agree, sticking him on the mic at all, even for a short period of time, is always going to be more money. But I actually didn't mind the fact that we almost got an Austin version of him where he just comes out, surprises people, and just gets straight into fighting and doesn't talk because actually that says something about Punk. It's a different dimension to him.
Yeah, maybe I'm wrong.
No, I don't. I totally agree that if he's on the mic, you can't take away that if he's on the mic, he's money because he's fantastic. I just think the backstage segments were all geared about telling the story about
Seth.
And yeah, I wouldn't have wanted to lose one of them. I think that worked really well this week. But we'll see. I mean, we'll see where we're going. We'll see what happens on Saturday night's main event because that's Punk's wrestling on that show. Rollins isn't. So I'm sure we'll definitely get more CM Punk on Saturday.
Rollins is wrestling on Saturday night main event.
Is he?
Yeah, he's in
the same match. Yeah, of course.
They're in the same match.
They're in the same match.
Andy, what was your other takes?
I just wanted to say again about Zoey Stark and how gnarly that fucking injury is. That's a horrific one. I've spent most of my life with knee injury and knee issues. That looked horrific, and I know we've joked about her being Sid Justice and Psycho Sid, but good lord,
no,
I mean,
you don't want to see someone get hurt, do you?
She could be out for, and she's had ACL and MCL and meniscus tears in NXT that kept her out for about a year, and I can't see her coming back for at least a year. Which, when you consider they've recently just got rid of Sonya Deville, and Shayna Baszler. Yeah. This is her first match out without those two, and her first experience of being like after that is that, and that's just like when it rains, it pours.
You don't want someone to get hurt, and I don't want someone's career to be over, but I don't think she'll come back from that.
That looked really gnarly. Looked really nasty.
Not wrestling anyway. I mean, she could, some sort of bodyguard gimmick type thing, but I can't see her getting back in the ring. I think unless it looked a lot worse than it actually is, but that looked bad.
I mean, I haven't checked the things like Raja this morning or any time to see if there's any medical update, but I'd be remiss to have a look.
Just the one thing I will say on that, I think you're right, Andy. I think you're spot on. I don't think I think she was supposed to lose that match, but they had to ad lib. Obviously, I think Rhea was always going to win, but I suppose in a way that could play into a bit of the Rhea and Io Sky storyline. The fact that she did beat a former Damage Control member. So, you know, they could do something with that, and hopefully that wouldn't make her loss look that bad. But yeah, I agree. I think she was definitely going to lose.
Yeah, I've just got a few things that I just want to touch on, gent. So one was there was no acknowledgement of damage control. They could have had a little backstage segment or something. I know, but they could. EO could have acknowledged
Kyrie's existence.
Yeah. Before, which they didn't. She was there.
Oh, was she?
EO was there. She was in a backstage segment.
Oh yeah, of course she was.
So that says that I thought the Austin Theory face turn was quality. Well, it's not official, but it's going to happen. And if you watch it week on week, it's obviously he's getting gradually over as a face.
Yes,
I have said to you, check out his Instagram profile. He does come across as like John Cena 2.0, and I know Dave's going to hate this, but I do want to see what he's like as a face. He's got the look. He's great on the mic.
He's probably kind of likable as well. Like as a nice guy, kind of likable.
Not but hopefully not forced down your throat kind of thing. The other thing, I thought the crowd was really good this week. I thought they were fucking there were points in the card. They weren't brilliant all the way through. But it was good that they were into it, because I even sat there and watched the tag match with Claire and the kids whilst we were having dinner. And I was just like, the difference, if this match was on SmackDown, it wouldn't have had the same impact.
Yeah, 100%.
It had a Raw because the crowd weren't so into it. That being said, we did say the crowd was half decent on SmackDown, but it just goes to show, it just goes to show when the crowd are into it, you can put on a 2.5 star match and it turns into a 4-star.
That's exactly what Andy said the other week, and I've always said this, and they tend to do it around WrestleMania season. They tend to go to the most over cities. You know, last week, Dayton, or the week before, not great. This week, or last week on SmackDown, Greensboro, North Carolina. So always an amazing wrestling place. I mean, I think that's one of the first places. There was a War Games match, and one of the first places Sting fought Ric Flair and Dusty Rhodes and Ric Flair and Steel Cage. So it's like wrestling history. And then Raw was in Greenville, South Carolina, which I think, Fraz, you'll remember, used to do loads of nitros used to come from Greenville, because Ric Flair used to come out and go, hello, Greenville, the way he used to say it. I think that's the arena that he did the fake heart attack in, or it might be the one where he stripped off to his boxer shorts and elbowed and knee dropped the ring when he was in with Mean Gene Okerlund. But yeah, what I'm basically saying is they're wrestling towns, wrestling cities. The crowds want to go out. I haven't seen, but just a quick note on SmackDown, Greensboro Coliseum, I can't believe it was that full for SmackDown. That's one of the biggest crowds they've had in that arena since the Attitude Era. They couldn't even get that crowd in that building when they did the winner take all Survivor Series invasion angle.
Oh, was that from there?
So yeah, I mean, absolutely incredible. I couldn't believe it when they said that's where they were and how full it was. And obviously, Greenville this week was pretty full as well. So yeah, I think 2 really good shows from crowds. And I hate to say this, but I think if you look at this as a business, I think you need to start thinking about where you go. And if places aren't drawing, and if you're not making money and they're not making the TV product any better, I'd stop going there for TV.
It's like I said in the chat earlier, boys. I think, there are cities in the States, and when they come over to Europe, for the European tour, it felt like an almost Attitude Era style crowd. They were boisterous, they were energetic, they were into everything. They sang, they cheered, they booed. There was everything going on. I feel like the post-Mania slump and backlash slump has been down to the fact that they've been in podunk towns, and that's no disrespect to the towns they've been in, but the crowds have been mums and dads taking their kids along to watch a bit of the wrestling, and it's not really what we expect. Obviously, as wrestling fans, we expect boisterous, we expect passionate, we expect crowds that want to be there to show their support or their hatred for someone. And you don't get that with kids sitting on their hands. You don't get that with kids. But Raw did benefit from a better crowd. I do want to just do a bit of admin in terms of things just catching up for the week. I did mention it earlier. unfortunately, despite the better crowd, like I said, Smackdown did slump to its lowest rating of 2025. But I think, like we said earlier, that's payback for the fact that they've had a few meh weeks. Raw, unfortunately, this week has posted its second lowest rating since it joined Netflix, which I think, again, is also paying for a rough couple of weeks, or not necessarily rough couple of weeks, but like
it's hard.
It's not been bad, but
were they up against like American football or bloody?
No, they might have been up against one of the conference finals, maybe. But go on, Farad.
So historically, you guys have known that after WrestleMania, I stopped watching wrestling. I don't watch it, and it's only because I've been invested in the product for the last 2 years because of the bloodline, because of Cody Rhodes, perhaps the return of CMpunk, etc., etc. You know, you do just drop off, and there will be that natural until perhaps SummerSlam comes up, and maybe you might get an appearance here from a certain Hollywood movie star that perks interest from casuals. But for me, like, yes, you could tell me this was the worst rated Raw of the year, or since they joined Netflix, but I'm invested in certain storylines, so therefore that kind of thing doesn't really affect my opinion or whether I'll watch it next week. Perhaps it might do to some of the purists or people that are angling for Triple H to get out, or they want different storylines. But for me at the moment, the product is good, and I'm enjoying it. And it was just my last take to close the show was just about Jey Uso and what he's done with the title since winning it. I know so many people were just like, I can't believe he won the Rumble. I can't believe he's going to beat Gunther. I'm not interested in the storyline. He went on, he won. Guys, I'm not being funny, but he's got Logan Paul. I know everyone's not a fan of him, chasing him. He's got Gunther a week or 2 weeks later. If he gets past Gunther, he's then got Seth. You know, he's a fighting champ, and he's making that whole title picture so relevant. Like, I can't remember the last champion that had 2 or 3 people like actively in a storyline, like cutting promos with them in the ring, than Jey Uso. I'm super excited about where it's going to go. And as I say, it's fresh. They're different stories. It's a bit like what I was saying about Drew and Priest. They're both great talents. Get them doing something else. Get them involved in the US title picture, but have a feud with Jeff Cobb or JC Mateo. But yeah, I think Jay's awesome at the moment and deserves all his flowers. He's definitely flying the flag for the company in the absence of people like Cody and Roman and CMpunk, who's obviously not in that scene at the moment. But I thank you, gentlemen. I thank you for your time this evening. I hope the viewers have watched. If you agree or disagree, please leave comments, like, subscribe, share this with everyone. We appreciate all the support, and we'll catch you at the weekend for, I think we've got our best ever King of the Ring video coming out.
Our King of the Ring about the King of the Ring. Just on that, did everybody see the message I put on the group the other day about the King of the Ring? You've got to watch our King of the Ring show this week to find out what I'm talking about. But there's a little argument about when the King of the Ring actually started and when it didn't. But WWE actually posted something about it.
Oh.
Watch our show this Sunday.
Catch the show.
Catch the show. All right, guys.
Cheers, guys.
Have a good one.